Hello, good day to you. Welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. We're continuing our study today in the book of Psalms. We're going to break from some other books to do some Psalms, and we're going to break from Psalms to go back and do a complete book. I think we'll do one short one, then some more Psalms, and then probably a long one. I'm thinking Exodus. Let's read. Bless the Lord, O my soul. O Lord my God, Thou art very great. Thou art clothed with honor and majesty, who coverest thyself with light as with a garment, who stretchest out the heavens like a curtain, who layeth the beams of his chambers in the waters, who maketh the clouds his chariot, who walketh upon the wings of the wind, who maketh his angels spirits, his ministers a flaming fire, who laid the foundations of the earth, that it should not be removed forever. Thou coverest it with the deep as with a garment. The waters stood above the mountains. At thy rebuke they fled. At the voice of thy thunder they hasted away. They got up by the mountains, they go down by the valleys, unto the place which thou hast founded for them. Thou hast set a bound, that they may not pass over, that they turn not again to cover the earth. He sendeth the springs into the valleys, which run among the hills. They give drink to every beast of the field. The wild asses quench their thirst. By them shall the fowls of the heaven have their habitation, which sing among the branches. He watereth He watereth the hills from his chambers. The earth is satisfied with the fruit of thy works. He causeth the grass to grow for the cattle, and herbs for the service of man, that he may bring forth food out of the earth, and wine that maketh glad the heart of man, and oil to make his face to shine, and bread which strengtheneth man's heart. The tree of the Lord are full of sap, the cedars of Lebanon, which he hath planted. Where the birds make their nests, as for the stork, the fir trees are her house. The high hills are a refuge for the wild goats, and the rocks for the conies. He appointed the moon for seasons, and the sun knoweth his going down. Thou makest darkness, and it is night, wherein all the beasts of the forest do creep forth. The young lions roar after their prey, and seek their meat from God. The sun ariseth, they gather themselves together, and lay them down in their dens. Man goeth forth unto his work, and to his labor until the evening. O Lord, how manifold are thy works! In wisdom thou hast made them all. The earth is full of thy riches. So is the great and wide sea, wherein are things creeping innumerable, both small and great beasts. There go the ships, there is that Leviathan whom thou hast made to play therein. These wait all upon thee, that thou mayest give them their meat in due season. That thou givest them, they gather. That thou givest them, they gather. Thou openest thine hand, they are filled with good. Thou hidest thy face, they are troubled. Thou takest away their breath, they die, and return to their dust. Thou sendest forth thy spirit, they are created. Thou renewest the face of the earth. The glory of the Lord shall endure forever. The Lord shall rejoice in his works. He looketh on the earth, and it trembleth. He toucheth the hills, and they smoke. I will sing unto the Lord as long as I live. I will sing praise to my God while I have my being. My meditation of him shall be sweet. I will be glad in the Lord. Let the sinners be consumed out of the earth, and let the wicked be no more. Bless thou the Lord, O my soul. Praise ye the Lord. It's one of those very focused on the creation psalms. One of the things I noticed as I was reading that, I started thinking about, and it's funny because I was going to be careful because I don't want my reading to become substandard, because It's very thought-provoking to listen to it, but to have to be saying it at the same time as you're able to think is kind of difficult sometimes. But like when it talks about the making darkness and it is night and all the beasts of the forest creep forth, the young lions roar after their prey and seek their meat from God. I remember several years ago, or maybe a couple decades ago probably, when they were like, oh, lions hunt at night. Who knew? Or it was like remarkable. They had rare footage of them hunting at night. They probably knew they hunted at night. Of course, they should have, because they could have consulted the Bible to know that they kind of rather to like to lay around and sleep all day. And, it's no big deal. It's not like that was divine revelation. In fact, he's not claiming it's divine revelation. He's just saying this is a revelation of the divine. I'm watching nature and observing the things that go on. And it is a revelation to me of God's awesome power, his eternal power and Godhead. As it says, these things can be perceived in the things that are made. Like I said, his eternal power and God. It's not necessarily a window into the grace and mercy of Jesus Christ. I mean, certainly not looking at lions and their activities. But also there's a sense in which it is, because he is also like a lion. He's the Lion of the tribe of Judah. He is not just a lamb. He is also a lion. And then God describes himself, I will roar after the prey. So there is that thing also. Because like I said, there's an upside. There's oftentimes symbols they can have both, their teeth were as the teeth of lions. They had breastplates. That's the word, breastplates of iron. And, of the locust army in Revelation chapter 9. So, symbols, lions aren't always good. That's just having something, I have the teeth of lion. That means they're good, right? No. Because a lion represents Jesus sometimes. And that's the important thing. You got to understand contextually what it is. But you can look at nature and contextualize things and understand that there's an aspect of that does reveal God. His power. The thing by the things that are made. Because I think on a whole, just without being all technical about, we understand these things are made of molecules and the particles are popping around and moving around. Particles in motion, that explains everything. I find that incredibly unbelievable. And from my book, I know you find the idea of God unbelievable, but I find the idea of no God to be unbelievable. Now, I understand it was more plausible to me before God intervened in my life, and I understand why that, but having had that happen, I still think, as I had for a long time, that it is more plausible. I only had begun to doubt, I think, because of a lot of my doubt had to do with my own failure to see myself as being God's work being built up. I look at the negative aspects of my life, and that I just saw as all as holding me back. And in some ways, the sins that beset us easily about, that we aren't able to cast off, if we haven't cast them off, they will hold us back. But the thing is, the Lord is faithful to his promise to save us. And so with every temptation, there is a way of escape. And it's like, and for me, it always came down to what I realized over time. It's like, I had to go after this. If I wanted to be holy like that, I mean, it's like, and I'd have to go after it humbly too, because like my buddy said, if you got perfect, you'd be in danger of pride. And you would be in danger of pride. Look at Satan, right? Thou was perfect in thy ways from the day thou wast created. It's interesting that there was a being like that. He predates us. We were not perfect in the day we were created. Interestingly enough, it's never said that about us. That we are being created to perfection. In fact, there was a verse there where it says, after they die and all this, it says they are created. There's resurrection hinted at. Like I said, Psalm 104, there's a good example of the ambiguous resurrection of the Old Testament is one way you could characterize it. Like if people say, Old Testament doesn't talk about resurrection. Well, it doesn't talk about Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior either. But it does, doesn't it? It does. If you are attuned to it at all. If you have any access to the Spirit of God, he will speak to you of Christ and how to see him in the Old Testament. I hope I do a good job of pointing it out, because it's like, to me, it seems very often quite obvious. So let's look at this in a verse-by-verse way, just like advertised, right? Bless the Lord, O my soul, O Lord my God, thou art very great. Thou art clothed with honor and majesty. And in all his doings, God is clothed. Some people I always have to take as, because you know why? Because you see that, and I love to sing about God. I praise him. I acknowledge these facts, but people will argue against it. Say, God is not great. Right? Wasn't that the book by one of those unbelievers? God is not great. It's like, because religion hasn't been so great is really what it is. Man, in his quest for God, has not been great in that he has not, just like of old. And I think a lot of it is just like always, they sought it not by faith. They don't really believe. They go through the motions, and sometimes going through the motions gets you to a place where you actually do believe. But for me, I think that's why early on I found a place where God came to me with power, because I needed that first. I couldn't just like go through the motions. To me, that's contrary to my personal makeup. I value things like authenticity more than maybe other people do. And that doesn't mean I'm necessarily 100% authentic. It just means that if I'm not, it causes me pain. And when things aren't, when other things aren't, it causes me pain because I hate it. I hate inauthenticity. I have a passionate dislike of it. And so anyways, the Lord, they will question and say, oh, God isn't great because of this and that. And it goes down often to the problem of evil. And it's like in one verse, I can't exactly tackle that, but I have done studies on that very issue. And that God says he creates light and darkness. He blesses and he brings about curses. He also judges both to with favor and also to destruction. That is, to those subject to those things, that's never going to be reconcilable in them with saying, oh Lord, you are so great. I mean, they may bow their knee to Christ. Out of, like I said, when the wisdom reveals itself, every knee will bow. I mean, you kidding me? Just like, hey, when Antichrist shows up, the only ones that don't bow are the servants of God. You know what I mean? So when Jesus comes, that's one of the things where you can tell it isn't Jesus. Because when Jesus comes, there will be no resistance. He will crush all resistance on day one. Absolutely. Like a lion crushes the neck of the prey, he will crush the neck of the enemy and bind him in chains. And clothe himself with honor and majesty because he has fulfilled his promises. And he will go about to establish his kingdom. Well, what about all the things what about all the things he has suffered, all the blasphemies he's endured, all the sinfulness of man that he has watched go by? I mean, he watched us do all those murders. He never liked it. But it's like that, in that there is a judgment that he intends to, like he's like, okay, I want to see what you guys do. And then afterwards, he's going to make us account for it. If you want to think of it as a simulation, go right ahead. And God's operating it. It matters what you do here. He will be clothed with honor and majesty because he's an honorable person. He's in majesty, that's his. He covers himself with light as with a garment. He is the light, the ultimate light of all of the lights, every man that comes into the world. That light of consciousness is part of him. That's why the spirit returns to God that gave it. That doesn't even, the part that enlivens us, that little part we share of him, that touches us, that gift, that spark, that living essence, but not just an animal essence, but an essence made after the image of him. Man became a living soul. And God has a soul. And as far as other creatures, it's not exactly clear, right? We talk about, I don't talk about it much. But I will not dispute with anyone on that. If you believe there is, and I'm not going to, I'll look forward to seeing it. I'd love to see my old dogs, right? Nothing wrong with that. But it's even, to me, whatever. I don't want to discourage anyone in that thought, but it's like, if you're dogmatic about it, I don't know. It's like, well, it's like, how much, what do these things mean to us? It's like, especially if we get things out of order, the people are important. And God loves animals too, obviously. But we all suffer. and the Lord himself has suffered with us. I think that's an important thing, because that sort of like helps. That leads me to feel like, well, I'm willing to hear whatever. I'm willing to accept that there is a completely understandable and coherent plan that I don't fully understand. You know what I mean? Like on some level. I mean, it makes sense to me in many ways. It does seem rather harsh in some ways, but it seems like for the glory that is going to be revealed, it is such a small thing. The sufferings of this life to be compared. And I haven't really suffered much. Not like some people have, anyways. Not maybe, I've suffered a lot of things. Anguish, trouble, but like when I see the suffering that other people suffer, I say, oh Lord, it's like, what am I even complaining about? I should be skipping through my days, except for the sorrow I feel for their suffering. Well, light is with a garment, who stretchest out the heavens like a curtain. He brings the light. He is the light. The origin of it all. Who layeth the beams of his chambers in the waters. I'm not sure how that means. The beams of his chambers in the water. Who maketh the clouds his chariot. These are obviously metaphors. It's like, who rideth upon the wings of the wind. And why do I say it's metaphor? Because it's like, I don't literally think God hitches up like magical horses to a cloud. Not that I got a problem with magical horses hitched to a cloud, or showing someone that, especially if that is a culturally relevant symbol to a prophet or something like that. Like going up by a whirlwind into heaven or whatever, chariots of fire, right? With Elijah. Nothing wrong with that, but in a sense also that such things have been. Men have gone up. Jesus Christ himself went up by a cloud into heaven. He makes the clouds his chariot. He literally rides in clouds, and he's portrayed as such. I remember there's a strange reference, but when I was a kid, there was a video game where there was a kid riding a cloud, which is interesting. It comes from Japan. I'm sure that's some sort of deity reference in there, because God rides upon clouds. And sometimes people see him as such. I mean, Arnold Murray's vision was seeing angels in the clouds, showing him numbers, telling us we were going from the fourth to the fifth seal, except I thought he was making it up, but I don't know. Well, one thing, it was like the things he claimed that were going to happen didn't manifest, so it's false prophecy. I've always been very careful. I say we're not in the end times yet. I have not seen a sign that we are in the end times, but I'm like, well, times are changing, and could we move into, is this a transitional phase that could bring us into those end times? I don't know yet. I certainly am concerned, as far as like, I want, like I said, be ready. We should always be ready. This should be good. Like I said, the things that happen should be an eye opener. Things are fragile. Society is not going in a good direction. The people on top are kind of looting everything. And there's just going to be left a massive bill. And they'll have their billions, and they will maintain their power. And, or so they think. Like what's going to happen in the face of that is who knows. I don't know. Nothing good. I know that. All the things I do know, actually. It's all the things I've ever read in the prophets will happen. You know what I mean? We don't need the end time. We know from the past 100 years of history, we don't need the end times to create a bloodbath. In fact, the farther we're along now, we've got even more technology than they did then. I'm sure we could really improve on our performance from World War II as far as blood, death, and destruction and mayhem. If that's what people want. And it seems to be that they don't necessarily want it, but they're heedless of the fact that they are tumbling towards it. Oh, well. Anyways, but God, he lays the beams of his chambers in the waters. In a sense, if they're about to destroy the world or whatever, I don't really, I do think, I don't really, is there going to be a nuclear holocaust? I tend to think not. If there was, I would assume then we're probably not going to see the Lord for another 1,000 years or something, because the world is going to have to recover. I don't know. Because I don't think I don't really see a nuclear explosion in the book of Revelation. Though I might have to think about it. It's like, I don't think I could see, because it's like a nuclear war would be much bigger than a lot of the things even described there, and would result in probably more death than described in Revelation. Revelation describes like the death of a third part of men, not like 80, 90%. So maybe a small exchange, hopefully, or hopefully not. Hopefully none at all. Anyways, he walketh upon the wings of the wind. He also commands the sea and the waves, and they obey him. The beams of his chambers. I wonder what that means. Like, I mean, as far as linguistically, not like, I mean, I think it's perfectly elegant and translated just fine, but I'm just curious to look in the good old Bible Hub to see if they have anything to say. Let's just, I'm guessing, well, let's look at the quick definition here. Beams of his chambers. Chambers are aliyah, a roof or a chamber. Okay, the beams appoint. Instead of layeth the beams, he appoints a roof chamber in the waters. I think that's talking about like maybe the idea of the firmament and the waters which are above that. And, when people get upset, well, not upset, but people talk about like, well, it's not really water up there. They used to think the sky was made out of water. I'm not sure if that's exactly it. The thing is, water does come down out of the sky. It does. And it goes up, and then it even describes it returns and it goes back again and all that. There's a cycle to it. The water cycle. I learned about that in junior high. All right. Never forgot about it. That's why. So I did well. Whatever I learned, I always seem to retain. Well, I mean, just general stuff. That's funny because it's like, I just mean when I got my education, I remember most of it. But the beams of his chambers with waters. I don't know if that means like the sort of the. It could refer to the things of heaven. There is a waters aspect, right? He showed me a pure river of water of life coming out of the throne of God. So it could be much more grand than that, because we are looking into the heavenlies, so to speak. The clouds are his chariots. He walks upon the wings of the wind, and he lays the beams of his chambers in the waters which are above the heavens, perhaps. Now, the waters that are above the heavens, the idea of that could simply be just their understanding of what the atmosphere is. Because there are waters up there. There's all kinds of things that are evaporated into the atmosphere. The atmosphere is something. It's not nothing. There's something up there, right? I mean, we know it's actually much more compressed down here, though. It's thicker up here. It's thinner as you get up there. But I don't know. Anyways, I do like the idea. It is ultimately, meant to be just a metaphor for creation and God's place over it. He made this world and everything in it, and he walks upon the wind, and the clouds are his chariots. It refers also to his overarching knowledge of the things that go on in the world, because he sees far from way up high. He makes his angels spirits, his ministers a flaming fire. I always like that, because I have always liked the association of the ministers of fire. I've always, the quote on my website is from Jeremiah, right? Jeremiah 23:29. Is not my word like a fire, and like a hammer that breaketh the rock in pieces? Christ said, I'm come to set fire on the world. What will I do if I find it already be kindled? And God himself is a flaming fire. Just as water comes out of God, also cometh forth fire. Just as creation, so also destruction. But there is what the point, part of the thing is in the world. We are here to resist evil. Not in the sense that, Jesus said, it's funny that Jesus said, resist not evil. But whosoever, and he meant that, I always take that contextually. But also in the sense of like, we're not supposed to just like give ourselves over to sin. Like, don't resist evil, just do all the sins you want. Jesus, of course, did not mean that. And that's what I mean. Yeah, resist not evil in the sense of like harm that may come to you sometimes, especially for the sake of the gospel. Like because I don't know. I mean, I said that you have to use wisdom in a lot of things that are said, because it's like we should not be simple, because Jesus did not have a lot of simplistic things to say. Some things are pretty straightforward. He had many things. I mean, there's books that said the hard sayings of Jesus. There's plenty of things that people still wrestle with. People still argue over. I mean, anyone who knows me closely, knows about the stories I've told about, or may have even experienced. Some of those, like the parable of, I think the parable of the workers' wages in one sense, but also especially the parable of the unjust steward, where it's like, make to yourself friends of the mammon of unrighteousness. And people are like, okay, I guess it's like, that they may receive you into everlasting habitations. They can't handle the idea of the Lord using irony, that he would use words in the opposite way in which they would, or, and say things that it might be interpreted different ways. But that doesn't mean there's both ways are right necessarily. It's just that, what did he mean? As I say about Revelation, it's like, in the long run, as I look at it, ultimately, it's like, you can never win the annihilation debate. I mean, they have the more people believe them, but that's because they occupy a greater territory as far as tradition. And tradition is mostly nominal belief anyway, so I'm not really impressed by that. But it's like, in a sense, because there's scriptures there. And like I said, if you're willing to interpret death as merely symbolic, I don't see how, then of course then it's very easy to say, well, the torture is eternal, because that death doesn't mean anything. There is no second death. It's just a metaphor for eternal torture while you're conscious. There is no, it's like, there's no like, oh, you come back to life after the resurrection and now you stay alive. A lot of them believe that you never break in consciousness, like that there is no death at all. But death is something that is going to have an end. That means there will be no more death. So it can't be this thing that like because otherwise in the eternal torment model, death continues eternally. It is everlasting. It does not, because you cannot even say that it ends, because if it is just a metaphor for eternal torment, then they are dead while they live forever. And it's an abominable, I think it's an abominable doctrine. I say it's like a Rorschach test that so many millions and billions of people fail, apparently. On some level. I don't want to be, I sound quite intolerant of my brothers on that. I don't want to judge another man's servant, Lord. But I always pray that we would all come to a better understanding. I don't have everything in my head exactly right necessarily. I try to get it right. Maybe I'm wrong and he can convince me otherwise. Angels, spirits, his ministers of flame. I don't know what to say about maketh his angels spirits. They are ministering spirits sent forth to minister to them that will be heirs of salvation. Those are his holy angels, his messengers. There are other angels, evil angels and such. People often get into, and those also are spirits. If the angels are spirits, these other spirits are spirits that, like the spirits that were gathered before him, is described by the prophet. It doesn't even have to be literal for it to also be true. He didn't have to actually, but God actually had a conversation with all these spirits while he's sitting there, waiting. Well, what are you going to do about it? And how about you? And I got an idea. That is just a way of telling the story for men to understand. I mean, if you want to think of it as literal, fine. But to me, it's like the truth of it is God sends forth spirits. And we see many examples. He sent forth a spirit to torment Saul. And many of the king, he said, who will persuade Ahab that he may go up and die at Ramoth Gilead? And the spirits came forth. You have the spirits both on the right and the left. There's good spirits and there's bad spirits. There's evil spirits. And the evil spirits carry around things like evil ideas. And people, as they absorb things in the world, those evil ideas come together. And they receive the evil spirit into themselves. Spirits of murder. And someone takes enough of this evil into them, I believe it can become personified in an evil persona that is demonic. That it becomes the manifestation of a personal demon. Why not? Because that's how they're described. I haven't encountered anything like that. I wouldn't expect to. they would. Because I don't know, not necessarily. Maybe I should expect to. I don't know. I know a lot of people who've had experiences like with demonic forces and stuff. I don't seek that stuff out. I'm not intimidated by it. Oh, I guess I have been attacked or once. I forgot about that. I had that thing when you're in bed and something attacks you. That was weird. Called on the name of Jesus and it went away. So that reassured me. And that's weird. That's a story I don't tell very often because I kind of forget about it. It was when I was younger. It was before I really, it was back when I was like not following the Lord. You know, before I turned to the Lord, when I thought I was going to die, back when I was in high school. No. See, was it before then or was it just after? It was just when I started, when I came back. Maybe for all the evil that I'd done in my bedroom. I don't know. It was a place that something had to go away from. Yeah, I do think that was in that period, yeah. I still had a lot of problems. I started to take the Lord seriously, but I didn't know how to live right. He laid the foundations of the earth that it should not be removed forever. You know, and what are that? Sorry. The foundations of the earth, you know, that's the earth is set. I mean, it's pretty much here. I think early in the earth's history, it had an impact. It's still here. You know what I mean? It's not to be removed. And not only that, you know, though we expect the scientists say, well, as we look at things, everything's winding down. And in a couple billion or 100 billion, I don't know, some billions of years from now, everything's going to burn out. All the energy will be dissipated and everything will kind of get cold. And the sun will supernova long before that and blow everything up and all this stuff. But we already know from the scripture that God is going to renew everything. And so that's not how things are going to change. You know, whatever you see coming is not actually going to come because there aren't going to be a billion years from now for that to happen. And the universe is going to have its constants adjusted or something like that, you know, to make it a little more perfect. You know, I always thought it was interesting that it takes 365 days for. I was wondering when the Earth first started out, did it take exactly 360 days to go around the sun? Is that how it used to be? It started off at a perfect 360. Doesn't that almost sound like a way it would? Like, and then it started slowing down or something like that. I mean, it's been going for so long, or is it speeding up, or is it variable? I don't know. When you think if things hit it, they might slow it down, especially if they hit it like head on. But removed. The earth isn't going anywhere. It's going to be shaken. You know, the earth shall reel to and fro like a drunkard. I think it might even say there, and be removed. But it might be referring there to the land, of course, because Isaiah was prophesying against Israel in the apocalypse of Isaiah, as it's called. But it's sort of apocalyptic in that in the end of the world's foundations will be shaken, you know, not destroyed. God's not going to destroy the world, but it will be changed. I mean, a lot of cataclysms have already happened to the earth, and it will have this other one, this final one, before it is renewed. Well, and it's also going to, I don't know. I don't know exactly how the millennium fits into that, or whether that's part of the renewal. But the new heavens and the new earth come about at the end of whatever it is, whatever that work is that Christ has to do on earth is. You know, that's as far as what his kingdom has to accomplish. That was said in such a way to accommodate other people with non-millennial beliefs. But anyways, thou coverest it with the deep as with a garment. The waters stood above the mountains. And it's referring to the flood. So I thought that this probably the beams of his chambers in the waters. He had like the roof of the world. And the water stood above the mountains. At thy rebuke they fled. At the voice of thy thunder they hasted away. There are a lot of cataclysmic floods throughout history. I wish I would be able to say, I've never found anyone, I know people say like, it's all just the big flood. But there's so much other stuff embedded in it. It's like, I don't know where that exists. There was at one point in ancient history a global, it was the water world, or so they say. At one point when the entire world was covered with water. So, you know, I'm not an archaeologist or an anthropologist, not a geologist or whatever. But I always, the thing is that there are a lot of things that Earth has experienced. Like I said, cataclysms. There is a final cataclysm. Even though God has brought about many cataclysms, such as the floods, or the flood. At thy rebuke they fled. At the voice of thy thunder they hasted away. Yeah, the thing I've always said is, like, the problem with Genesis 6 is it really sounds like a global flood. And it was written that way. As far as I have trouble. I'd like to be like, oh, it was a local flood. It's like, but that's not how it sounds. So it's like, it's always been an issue. You say, well, just believe it. It's like, well, I do, but it's like, I don't believe it the way I believe in Jesus, quite frankly. As far as that goes, I'm willing to believe it, but it's like some of the things when I hear people like Ken Ham and that talk about it and the creation science, I'm like, I listen to it, I'm like, this is not serious. And they believe in things like turbo evolution, which to me, I'm like, I don't know, I not without selective breeding and stuff. I don't know. Special creation is out the window. Everything's just all messed up. I don't understand it. Anyways, to me, the main thing is, like, we have real problems in this world to face. And what the story of the flood tells me is that those who prepare and who listen to the Lord and are obedient to him and are pleasing to him, they get through the trouble. Even when the whole world is condemned under evil, there was a place for God's servants safe aboard the ark. And the earth also was preserved from that cataclysm by the animals that were included. And the main thing is just that God's salvation, it's that we have to listen to him. By faith, Noah built that ark. And whatever God tells us to do, we need to continue and do it. And for each of us, that's not necessarily going to be obvious. Like, you have to find what your calling is. What are your gifts? Your gifts, you have natural gifts, and then gifts you may receive from God. Like, is new things in your life. At thy rebuke they fled, at the voice of thy thunder. They go up by the mountains, they go down by the valleys into the place where thou hast founded for them. The places where the waters now find and rest, that they may not turn again to cover the earth. And because with a lot of these inundations, whatever, I don't want to get, I guess I'm way too skeptical on that probably. That's what I was good. So let's just go on to the next. He sendeth the springs into the valleys, which run among the hills. They give drink to every beast of the field. Again, this is like that double aspect. I was talking about fire has a positive and a negative aspect. The lion has a positive and negative. Waters. The serpent cast out of his mouth waters as a flood. A flood of waters can be it's the judgment which God brought about on the earth, right? Because the earth was filled with violence. That's what I say. So if we fill the earth with violence, God will destroy us all. Except for those of us who find ourselves in that ark that is Christ. Don't just find yourself in it. You better get in it. It's not, you don't just, that's the thing. A lot of people, like, what they've done is they've taken a ticket for the ark and they put it in their pocket and they wandered off back into the world. They didn't actually get on the ark. You know what I mean? Like, if you don't actually get on board with Christ, like, living. I mean, like, and mostly to me, it is about being obedient, fearing God, loving righteousness. If we continue to just sin as though we believed the doctrine, let us sin the more that grace may abound, we will find ourselves that we have mocked God. I'm not saying, hey, if a brother be overtaken in a fault, restore such a one in the spirit of meekness, lest thou also be tempted. Don't think you're beyond temptation, brother. You're pretty holy. You think you're beyond temptation? Watch out. Satan is lurking like a hungry lion. He wants to seek whom he may devour. And pride goes before a fall. That's why we always watch out for the pride. That's why, even if I was perfect, I wouldn't tell you. I mean, other than that perfection, which I already have, clothing me through Christ, through his blood, I am perfect in that sense. All his works are finished from the foundation of the world. And so it's going to work out. That's that I got to believe that, because otherwise I will you have to have the sense of victory, because he promised victory. So there's no other mentality I can think of that's not, you have to have the mentality of, we're going to march on to victory, even if they kill us, because it's like, whatever. It's like, I know he's going to kill us. He's going to overcome us. We're not going to win that way. But that was just said, hey, don't worry about the people that kill the body and have no more they can do to you. They give drink. God, who flooded the world, also the same waters give drink to all the animals, right? The fowls, by next to them, the fowls have their habitations. The cedars of Lebanon, remember, they put their roots down by the great waters. That's also metaphorical for like the way, people glob on to God, as far as the God's blessings in the world, and he does bless the world. Everything, we all gain from it. In the natural world itself, watering the hills with his chambers, the earth is satisfied from his chamber. Again, it's like his chamber. It's from the sky. The earth is satisfied with the fruit of thy works. He causeth the grass to grow for the cattle and the herb for the service of man, that he may bring forth food out of the earth, and wine that maketh glad the heart of man, and oil to make his face to shine. So it's hard to say it's all bad. It's been around for a long time. But if you have a problem with it, you shouldn't use it. And it's not good for your health to be getting drunk. Once you get past the happy stage, I don't know. I can't really recommend it. I can't forbid it. That would be, because it's like, that would be more dogmatic than the scripture allows, because the scripture does not forbid it. Some denominations do, and I get it. That's one of the reasons the Adventists are some of the longest living people. They've lived very healthy lives for the most part. But it's hard to argue with their longevity, right? And one of the things is they don't drink. Oil to make his face to shine. Does that mean just having oil, being anointed with oil, and clean and shiny? And they may have valued that. Also, but I think also of the value of it, perhaps the lighting value, but also, I like to drink. My daughter always thinks it's funny because I drink olive oil. And I like it, even though it's kind of got a bitter flavor. It's nutty, though. It's good. I always get the extra virgin, It's, whatever. And bread which strengtheneth man's heart. Now, since people suggest that I don't think that what it means is like literally like it actually makes you heart healthy. That's not really what it's saying. What it's saying is, like I said, the heart is oftentimes, in this sense, it would be more like their energy. Because imagine if you got to go, you're really tired out and you're, that sugar rush after you eat. And then again, we're not talking about Wonder Bread here. A lot of our processed food is way different than what they're talking about. The kind of bread they would have been eating versus the kind of stuff they're feeding us. I said, but it's useful bread. And I've always loved bread. Jesus himself blessed it. It's not to be, but again, it's like all things have to be taken in moderation. Every good thing, it can be overdone. If wine is a good thing, it certainly can be overdone. If oil is a good thing, I guess, you can overdo it with oil, I guess. It's usually used for anointing, right? They anoint themselves with the chiefest oils, right? Sometimes people go about this whole, they got to pamper themselves. But these are blessings. We enjoy them. We enjoy the good things of the world. That's why people complain about things not being perfect, because it's like they are envious, or often on the behalf of others, they'll say, hey, look, they don't have it good. These people have it great. That's so unjust. It is. It's the injustice of the world. And they want to blame God because he lets it happen. But God lets it happen so he can judge us. How dare it? Why would you? It's like, he hath shown thee O man, what is good and what the Lord requires of thee, but to do justly and to love mercy and to walk humbly with God. And they know that, and they don't do it because their wicked heart has a different desire. The food comes, it rains on the just and the unjust. You know? The trees of the Lord are full of sap, the cedars of Lebanon, which he hath planted, where the birds make their nests. As for the stork, the fir tree are her house. The high hills are a refuge for the wild goats, the rocks for the conies. He appointed the moon for seasons, the sun for knoweth his going down. You know, it's got an appointed time to go up and go down. He knows his going down. See, that's personification of the sun. The sun is not an actual person, and the writer of this knows he's not a person. It's just personification as a literary device has existed for thousands of years. All right. Sometimes these things are hard for people to accept. The sun knows his going down. It's not literal. It's beautiful poetry. It's as though the sun had a mind. It is, because he's always on time, you know? And so the high hills are a refuge for the wild goats, the rocks for the conies. The rabbits make their homes in the rocks. They are small folk and weak, but they make their homes in the rocks. There's a sort of wisdom to that. And also because they dig down, they know they don't have much, so they have their burrows underground. And that's their place of safety. And because other creatures, though they're bigger and stronger, can't get at them in their rocky, tunnels. They can't dig them out. The birds make their nests. All the fowls of heaven made their nests in his boughs. Ezekiel 31. That blessing that we partake of, man often in it is corrupt. They corrupt themselves. I mean, God's blessings aren't corrupt or even corrupting, but man is corruptible. And so any good thing could be corrupted by us, as we do. We have the knowledge of good and evil, so we can turn that which is good into that which is evil. And can that which is evil be made into that which is good? That which should have been for good could be turned into evil, because I know the scriptures that say that. Which should have been for their good ended up being for their hurt. And yes, and what people often intend to the hurt of God's servant ends up doing them good. No weapon formed against you shall prosper. And that's, of course, ultimate. They can take your life. They can make you suffer. They can take away all the things of this world. But that which you have in God, if you've properly been putting your treasure away in heaven, you haven't lost a thing. It's like, and all these things are fleeting. Everyone's going to lose this anyways. They run around trying to make the most of it. But they seek not he that made it. And they don't consider that, it was made so that the commandment that Jesus received was everlasting life. To show us the way that we might live forever. And if that isn't meaningful to you, then I don't know. I don't know what people want. I want more. The temptations of this world are alluring. They really speak to the flesh, to the desires of the flesh, the lust of the eyes. But if God gives us, that's why we have to have eyes to see and ears to hear. We have to have the spiritual eyes of our understanding opened by God for us to even see the value of the God is offering. To us to really be able to discern, like we can discern that, there's probably something behind this all, but that doesn't necessarily make us care about it, and seek it. We're without excuse in that we kind of know, we have a conscience that tells us, maybe I shouldn't do this, or, we know when we do wrong. We're a law unto ourselves often. Even if we have... I know some people are born with quite few scruples. I always think of the extreme, but they're the exceptions. Most of us have quite a... in society... And if you don't have a sense of right and wrong, because you don't have an inborn moral compass, and I don't know anyone has a lot of it has to do with society, but our consciences also bear witness when we see the injustice and justice of things. We come up with a sense of what's right and wrong. And it's usually somewhat, at least on some level, that where it has to do with do unto others as you would have done to yourself. You kind of know, or you ought to know better, right? We ought to know better when we're mistreating people, because we know we wouldn't like to be treated that way, but they just don't think. And the wisdom hasn't been revealed to them to see their own hypocrisy. That's one thing I always prayed about. Lord, show me my hypocrisy. Well, see it if I have it. And whenever it manifested itself, the Lord revealed it. I was like, ooh, I didn't know I was hypocritical like that. But in some senses, it's hard not to be hypocritical if you don't have conflicting interests, and we do. And not that it was a big deal or anything like that. It was major hypocrisy. I'm just saying, I look for every detail. Every idle word shall men give account in the judgment. So that's how I account in my life. I count my every idle word as this has to be, what does the Lord think of this? And not that I'm afraid of the judgment of it. I'm like, I'm thinking, well, I am afraid of his judgments. I mean, if he doesn't like that, then I don't want to do that. Very simple. I'm not afraid he's going to condemn me because I'm Christ's. And when he looks at me, he sees the blood of Jesus. He sees me perfect. It's not that he doesn't notice that I'm not measuring up yet. He notices that. But that's not how he's reckoning his relationship with me. His relationship with me, he reckons as per the blood of Christ's work. Meaning I'm cleansed from my sins. And that goes all the way down to the bottom as far as I'm concerned. From the foundation of the world, he knew every sin I was going to commit. And when he comes to me and says, I'm going to save you if you believe in me, and I do that, and it's all an accomplished feat, really. Even though it hasn't been lived out yet, that's why we talk about being saved in the past instead of the future, which by all rights we should. Well, when he comes to save us with the resurrection, we'll finally have our purchased possession of the promise made, and blah, blah, blah. Because we got to receive it someday. Otherwise, all that got to be true and every man a liar. He appoints the moon for seasons, and the sun knows he's going down. We talked about that. He appointed the sun, the moon, and the stars for signs and for seasons. I don't, other than the seasons of the year and all that, I don't know, I don't think that means, to discern prophetically what's going on. Though other than there are certain signs, like the moon turning to blood. And I don't mean like the blood moon necessarily. I mean, that could be one. I mean, I remember watching that. I'm like, this is not impressive. I've seen redder moons just from the effects of the atmosphere. Sometimes the moon will come red just because it's rising. And I don't think I think that's a much more extensive thing than just like a one-day thing, like a half eclipse or whatever, that you might have. The darkening of the sun and the moon on multiple occasions, Revelation, is a much more significant thing, I would think. Because it also happens in concert with other events. That's one of the things I say. Like, when we had blood moons, I'm like, this is nothing, because it's just an isolated blood moon. It's not happening in the midst of all this other stuff. It's like, all this other stuff from Revelation is happening, and the moon is red, and the sun is darkened. It's all happening at the same time, as it is written. You make darkness, and it is night. Sun goes down, the night. So sometimes the moon, I was watching this thing on the Cherokee not too long ago. Not the Cherokee, the Comanche. Very different people, right? One, the Comanche were they were raiders and horsemen of the plains, right? But they would go out on when the grass was tall, so the horses would have forage, and when the moon was full, they would travel by night in their bands to go on raids, and they would suddenly appear, out of nowhere, seemingly. But anyways, sometimes the moon brings out seasons, because when the full moon is out, there's things that can be done at night that work better, especially the hunt, right? It's nights, and all the beasts of the forest do creep forth. Those that have been hiding, looking for forage. In the evening, as the sun goes down, animals come out. I encounter animals at night more frequently ever than during the day. Certain animals you encounter during the day. There are daytime animals, right? And there are nighttime animals. And cats and lions tend to like to hunt in the evening and night. Especially if you have a full moon, I'm sure they'd love to go out all night. They seek their meat from God. I like that. Because it's like that is part, God has to provide them and feed them. They're carnivores. And God has made all things to, like, like that circle of life. I mean, it all works together. The sun arises, they gather themselves together, they lay themselves down in their dens. Man goes forth to his work, to his labor until evening. The sun comes up, the lions kind of go hide from the sun. They go down to their dens. They don't want to be out in the hot sun if they can avoid it. It's very true. Especially if it's hot. They will hunt in the day, I know, but I wonder if that's desperation or opportunity, A lot of predators are opportunistic. They're waiting for a good chance. So man goeth forth unto his work and to his labor until the evening. Man works during the daytime. That's usually, as far as that's how it has been until the advent of electricity. And then some people work all night. It's not good for you though. From what I understand, if you work second or third shift, if you don't go to bed by 10 o'clock, it significantly impacts your long-term health prospects and lifespan. So maybe try to make sure I get into bed earlier than I used to. Especially now that I'm getting older, I can afford less to try to mess with things like that. These truths, this is what man was created to sleep in the evening. Those that stay up all night partying and drunkenness, that's what that's for usually. Because there was no other, they to be drunken in the night. That's what it says in the scriptures. And it's true, because being drunken in the daytime, it mentions that too. Because that's another level. They either be drunken in the daytime, and I'm not trying to come down on anybody. If you're drunken in the daytime and drinking all day, you need to get to treatment. Go to AA. Don't wait. Because that's a ticking time bomb that's going to kill you. It's like, if you drink communion and you drink at family holidays, if you limit yourself, you're probably just fine. I'm not going to be. I think that is within the realm of, especially if you're keeping it within moderation. You're not getting blasted at Christmas and stuff. You're unable to function. But anyways, all right. Oh Lord, how many? It's better to be like a Nazirite. Take a vow or something. I won't drink anything. You can avoid it. It was considered sacrificial, to not do it. Oh Lord, how manifold are thy works. He's got many kinds of works. Manifold means differentiated. There's more than one. In wisdom hast thou made them all. The earth is full of thy riches. There is so much riches in the world that God has made. So is this great and wide sea, wherein all things creeping innumerable, both small and great beasts. And this is what the natural world. The Bible is a very ecologically, it talks about man, like the men destroying the world, because there are ways in which people don't care. They just rip things apart and destroy things to profit. And that isn't entirely what the way we should use the earth, because it is also an inheritance for the future, and also it belongs to God. And on some level, we should take it and use it and prosper in it, as he has said. We should turn it into a wonderful, beautiful garden. But also that has a place for the animals that God placed. God saved the animals in the ark. I don't think he wanted us to kill them all off through extinction. That doesn't make any sense to me. Though many animals have died, and but in the sense of that he did preserve them in that extreme where they all could have been destroyed. He said, well, no, I don't want to destroy everything. And though God has allowed things to go extinct and all that, sure. But life goes on. Animals clear the way, and then new animals come into being. And where they, I definitely don't buy that macro evolutionary model where all the creatures are evolving from all the other ones. There's something more at work. But whatever. My belief in that doesn't matter one whit. or not. I don't have a problem hearing about it. I find it very fascinating, the things they say. Because it is based on a lot of observation. It's like things in the world are different over time. You know? Like, as you go to a set of rocks, and it's like, it's not like it's just like everything is jumbled together. Though I remember hearing one guy said there were places like that. I have never actually seen the evidence of that. Where it's like, like where you should have a pile of dinosaurs mingled up with all the other animals, and it's just all being a convoluted mess. In some, or something like that. Anyways. But there's a lot of unexplained things the man does not understand. And it's like the thing about God is he doesn't tell us like, hey, you got to understand exactly what I mean by a day. Or, you got to know exactly what I mean by this particular, it is, he hath shown thee, O man, what he requires of you, to do justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with God. God has, he has revealed the things that are important to him. Whether we agree on some particular issue is not, especially when, like I said, when it comes to that, it's like, I'm perfectly fine having people not agree with me, because it's like, I don't actually have a position. Other than that, like I said, I use the story and I teach from it, just as Jesus would teach from a parable. Because like I said, to me, I believe it on that level more so. Like as an object lesson of what God can do and how man should not allow the earth to be filled with violence and corruption like that. And I think that's what they mean to do. Or whether, I don't know if they mean to do it, but the spirits that run the world, the rulers of the darkness, the principalities and powers, the things that are above the men, the spirits that run them. That they don't, like the conspiracies and all that, the conspiracy theories, it's like there's something above that which drives them towards these goals. I've even heard about when they seek the spirits through, through the drugs they take, DHT and all, or DMT, I forget what it is. And try to find ways into these other dimensions and encounter things that you can only understand as demons. And that is doubtless what is guiding the evil impulses in the world, that of all the things that want to destroy people. Because that's ultimately what it gets down to, is like men's lives are being wiped out, murder on massive scale. Massive scale. Between the pandemic, the solution to the pandemic, the jab, which I want to... Anyone hear the number 17 million? That's an interesting number, because that's worldwide, apparently, a number of people that are no longer with us. Since about 2021. So anyways... in America, we don't keep track of all the people that were hurt. But in some countries, they have been, and I've been listening to the numbers. There go the ships. Now he's talking about the sea, the wide sea, both small and great beasts. There go the ships. There is that Leviathan, whom thou hast made to play therein. To me, that sounds like Leviathan, especially in this context, because it usually means like a sea monster, right? But a big sea creature. To me, it sounds like a whale, because I think of whales as literally they look playful, and they're also monstrously big, so it makes sense. And then monsters can be playful. They watch cats. Cats are monsters. A lion, kind of a lot. Especially in the African and Asian lion. I think the lion that they would have known was a different lion and bigger. Was it? No, that's the Atlas bear, the extinct bear. But there's an extinct lion from the Middle East, but I forget what it was called. Anyways, that Leviathan whom thou hast made to play therein. Yeah, they didn't have to go down to Africa to observe the savannah and the lions. They actually knew about them a little more firsthand. It's pretty interesting. That thou mayest give them their meat in due season, that thou givest them they gather. That thou givest them they gather. I don't know. I think because it's funny because in two clauses here, this word that is used in those two different ways, is used in a slightly, in a different way. That thou mayest give them the work, their meat in good season, is not the same sense of that as that thou givest them. Whatever. They gather. I don't know if it means a different version of the word, but it certainly has to be read differently. They gather. What God gives us, he gathers. Well, all the creatures. Well, the ships and the creatures. Everyone goes out to the sea to get their food, right? What he gives us and them, the fishes and the whales and the leviathans and whatever other creatures are out there, you open your hand and they are filled with good. Just creation provides. He is the creator. The message is God is great. It's not that he literally sticks his hand out and goes, here you go, kids, and feeds them fishes. No fisherman has ever had God's hand come out of the clouds and dump a load of fish on his boats, except perhaps Peter, right? But that wasn't out of the clouds, right? They still went. And that's a great thing. This is very messianic, right? Because in a sense, Jesus literally did this. He literally took them out and showed he could just bring in all the fishes they wanted. He could provide all the food we needed. Just as God provides through nature all that is necessary to sustain man and beast. You hide your face. And I know we're over an hour, but I was thinking about the other day. From now on, I'm going to consider it an hour minimum Bible study. And I try to cut it off before an hour and a half. But once I get to a minimum hour, then I'll start thinking about breaking. But I don't know. I want to get to the final point. And whatever. Let's just keep going a little longer. You hide your face, they are troubled. They'll take us away their breath, they die. God, there's always this, hide not thy face from me, O Lord. We want, cause your face to shine upon me. Let your hand open up and bless me. You know what I mean? And if he hides his face, he takes away his blessing. We all depend on him. We don't even know how much we depend on God. Then that becomes trouble to them, both man and beast. You take away their breath, they die, and return to the dust. For dust thou art, and to dust you shall return. From the book of Genesis, right at the beginning. Man's life was turned, is but a vapor. And quite almost literally, right? Just dust. That's all we came from. That's why we understood this from very ancient times. Everything we are made of is just particles. Just little pieces that can all be broken apart. And we can never put them back together. They just return. We come alive and then we go down to death. And everything that goes down to death crumbles away to dust. I mean, the pharaohs tried to prevent it. They're still just dust. They're just dusty old mummies. I mean, you can still try to preserve your body from turning to dust, but it's still just dust. You send forth your spirit. They are created. And thou renewest the face of the earth. I just think it hints at resurrection because it says this just after. It does say, God created all things at the beginning. These are all his works. He's done. But when it says this, why I say it, this is not explicitly the resurrection. But like I said, there's an implicitness to it. And if the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy, and the Psalms very often are prophecies, because he makes, these are things that are quoted. He makes his angels spirits. To which of the angels at any time said he, sit thou at my right hand till I make your enemies your footstool? No. When he sent forth his spirit to create us, we came from dust, at least our first father. And the first of all things, they all came from the particles of the world into life. God brought those things to life. He gave the breath of life. And that spirit, it enlivens us. It lightens every man that light, it is that light. And that light is the light of, we are a light to the world. Even if you don't have sight, you know what I mean? Your brain is on. You are conscious. We just, because it does definitely feel like the light's coming on if you have eyes. If you're blind, it's like that he turned up the volume. He snapped on the radio, and you're like, wow, we're live. If you don't do others, if you have neither hearing nor eyes, I don't know how you're listening to me, but you probably feel it through something tactile, like Helen Keller, and she felt the vibrating on the lips, and she somehow figured out how to talk. I guess if you can't hear or see, your brain will figure out a way to communicate with the world. At least if someone's patient enough to work with you. All right. The glory of the Lord shall endure forever. The Lord shall rejoice in his works. If we are his workmanship created into Christ Jesus unto good works, we will endure forever, because that's what we are. We are part of his glory, because we are his workmanship, and his works are glorious. And the Lord rejoices in his works. He will rejoice in you, as a bridegroom over her bride. It says, over his bride. Sorry. He looketh on the earth, and it trembleth. He toucheth the hills, and they smoke. And God has power to do all these things. Creation and destruction are in his hands. I kill and I make alive. I wound and I heal. Neither is there any that delivereth out of my hand, saith the Lord. Deuteronomy 32. He looketh on the earth, and it trembles. Right, so I don't know what else to say. It's like, what it's saying is, all creation bows before him. He can... And if he sets his toe on that mount as he did to bring the law, it set it on fire. The Lord descended in smoke and fire on Mount Sinai. My brain was going to be Zion, and I saw it coming, and I stopped myself. It's like, Sinai? I will sing unto the Lord as long as I live. Well, that's my personal vow. I love the Psalms, every time I read one of these, I don't tell you guys, but I'm like, I think I should make that a song. And I will someday. I'll make my version of every psalm, even if I've got to do it in the millennium or the world to come. I'll love to hear the originals too. But mine will be in English, which is different, right? Let the sinners be consumed. Oh, I'm sorry. I read that silently to myself, and I was like, oh, yes. My meditation of him shall be sweet. It should be, as it should be. When you think on the Lord, sometimes I gotta go someplace quiet to be by myself, to just meditate upon the Lord, to talk to him, just quietly to let all the troubles of this life kind of get stripped off of me, Because it's like there's always trouble in the world, and it's hard to be in the world and not get it all over yourself and get distracted by it. And not just distracted, sometimes you genuinely just have to take care of things. It's just the way it is. And it takes you away from other things you might want to do or whatever. But it's like one thing you can never neglect to do is to continually call on the Lord. And especially, there are more intense times of that. And like I said, to me, it's like, if I can talk to the Lord and feel comforted in 5 minutes, that's good enough. I'm not there to show off to him how long I can pray. I've had long prayers when I needed to, not in public really, but and it's for a pretense to make long prayers. You might have a long prayer in public. It's not no pretense, I will sing I will sing praise to my God while I have my being. When we die, we don't have being anymore. That's one of the things I believe about death. You don't be. You basically go out of being. But when God restores you to life through the resurrection, it's like being created again. You come back into being. And I don't think you notice the in-between. That's just what I think. That's how I believe it goes. Like when you die, the next thing you will know is you are in the resurrection. So there's no waiting, and it's not like sleeping exactly. Soul sleep, you mean dead? I believe in death. That's why I wrote it. I believe in death and in the resurrection of the dead. I think doctrines that come against it are heretical. I do. I think that's the way it should be. That's the way God meant it. And then we have, through our own desires and our own other religions and doctrines, corrupted somewhat our understanding. Not in a super essential part of the doctrine, but, in one that leads to a lot of confusion, I think, and debate. You say, well, you're the cause of debate. No, I think it's the scriptures that's really the problem. Like I said, I think that Rorschach test of the death and torture, as I call it, is just, I think it's intentionally easy to misinterpret. It's not that easy to, but it's easily, there are plenty of little pockets of scriptures. If I take like 5 or 6 scriptures, look, I can construct something that's not true because I haven't taken into account other things that shed different light on that. That's why you get things like rapture doctrines, because they select scriptures and lead you on a breadcrumb trail to mislead you about the nature of the coming of the Lord. So my meditation of him shall be sweet. I will be glad in the Lord. Let the sinners be consumed out of the earth, and let the wicked be no more. Bless the Lord, O my soul, praise ye the Lord. Because God has promised this. I'm not, like I said, I don't despise the long suffering of God that led me to repentance, because I was wicked. I was once lost and now is found. But ultimately, I know God has to make an end, and that he wants to make a world in which there is no more wickedness. And while, I got wicked descendants that I love, that I want to see come into the world and enjoy Christ, I don't know how far that's going to go. And I don't know. It's like I could have had more children. I always say that. It's like maybe I should have had 20 kids, and then so what exactly is it people, because I'm always like, I have this weird thing where I talk about the uncreated. I guess for some people it's weird. It's unusual. I don't know, but I talk about uncreated people because I always try to measure the baseline of our blessing, not against like other living people, but against what we might have by alternative if we never existed. And it was certainly never having even an opportunity to never even see the light. Like I always said, when people say it's better to never be born, I just think that's a bitter recrimination. That's like sour grapes, because you just don't like your life. You know what I mean? Better to never be born. In the end, it wasn't true of Job anyways. Would have been better for him never be born. I don't remember if he said that. Jesus said it of Judas. That's why sometimes people argue with me about it. But I just think of it as a figure of speech that means like, yeah, that's about the worst you could ask. Because being never born is actually the worst thing that could ever happen to you. To be never born. You know what I mean? And when Jesus says it's better for you that you were never born, he's saying what you're doing is actually worse than the worst thing. That's why, and you can argue with me on that, but that's how I take it, as a figure of speech, right? But let the sinners be consumed out of the earth, that the wicked be no more. God does not want wickedness. Like I said, I try to take that humbly, considering myself, and like I said, in the Lord's will, in his time, let it be done. Even so, come Lord Jesus, right? Even though, there's like a tension between, how long, O Lord, holy and true, dost thou not judge and avenge our blood on them that dwell on the earth? And the notion that like, this long suffering of God leads men to repentance. The longer God allows. That's why I at some point in my adult life, I stopped being anxious for the end times to come. And also because I was realizing a lot of things people were saying, we're living in the end times. It just became Chicken Little. I was like, I'm not going to be part of Chicken Little. I'm sorry. We're not in the end times. Not yet. Not yet. We could got our toe in it, I guess, and I don't know it yet. But I don't know it yet. Anyways, thanks for joining me. Look forward to being back again tomorrow. No, not tomorrow, Monday. Not tomorrow, Monday. Remember, the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy.